Part 3. The Doctrine. Clarity as Stewardship. Chapter 7. Clarity is a responsibility, not a gift. There is another subtle misunderstanding that often shapes how people approach communication. Many treat clarity as a talent, something a person either has or does not have. In this view, some are naturally clear, while others are simply not good at explaining things. As a result, clarity is reduced to personality or preference. But this is not accurate. Clarity is not a gift, it is a responsibility. And this responsibility begins the moment you are entrusted with something to communicate, whether that is truth, knowledge, vision, or instruction. If God gives you a message, you are responsible for how that message is delivered. Not just that it is spoken, but that it is understood. This is where many people fall short. They assume that once something has been said, their role is complete. But communication does not end with expression. It ends with understanding. If what you say is not understood, then the assignment is not complete. This is not about perfection, it is about stewardship. Scripture consistently reveals that those who are given something are accountable for how they handle it. Whether it is knowledge, influence, or responsibility, it is not given casually. It is entrusted. And what is entrusted must be handled with care. This includes how it is communicated. Because when something meaningful is communicated poorly, its value is diminished, not in itself, but in its ability to reach others. Truth does not lose its power, but its impact is limited when it is not made clear. This is where clarity becomes a matter of stewardship. To carry a message is to carry responsibility. And part of that responsibility is ensuring that the message is not lost in the process of communication. It must not be buried under unnecessary complexity. It must not be hidden behind language that creates distance. It must not be presented in a way that prevents understanding. Because when that happens, what was meant to help others becomes inaccessible to them. This principle applies across every domain. In teaching, if knowledge is not made clear, students struggle, not because they are incapable, but because the communication has failed them. In leadership, if direction is not made clear, teams become misaligned, not because they lack commitment, but because they lack understanding. In business, if value is not made clear, the market does not respond, not because the offering is weak, but because it has not been understood. And in ministry, if truth is not made clear, people cannot receive it, not because they are unwilling, but because they cannot grasp it. In each case, the issue is not the absence of substance, it is the absence of clarity. This is why clarity must be approached intentionally. It is not enough to know something. It is not enough to feel strongly about something. It must also be communicated in a way that others can understand. This requires effort. It requires thought. It requires refinement. It requires the discipline to remove what is unnecessary so that what is essential can be seen. This is not always easy, but it is necessary. My role as a strategic communicator is not simply to express ideas. It is to translate them, to take what I know and present it in a way that can be received, to bridge the gap between what is in my mind and what can be understood by others. This is where my work as a cinematic strategist becomes relevant. In my book, The Cinematic Strategist: How to Win Trust and Authority, Lead with Conviction, Command Attention, and Transform Your Brand's Narrative from a Cost into a Capital Asset, I describe the gap between strategy and execution, the space where meaning is often lost. I refer to this as the strategic void. This is not just a business problem, it is a communication problem. It is what happens when something valuable is not translated clearly from one level to another. The strategist understands, but the audience does not. The intention exists, but the expression fails, and in that gap, value is lost. This reinforces the idea that clarity is not optional. If you do not take responsibility for clarity, something will be lost in translation. And what is lost may not be obvious immediately, but it will show up in outcomes. It will show up in misunderstanding. It will show up in hesitation. It will show up in lack of response. And over time, it will show up in reduced impact. There is also a tendency to assume that people will figure it out, that if something is important enough, others will take the time to understand it. But this is not always realistic. People are not only evaluating what is being said, they are also responding to how easily it can be understood. If something requires too much effort to process, it is often set aside, not because it lacks value, but because clarity was not provided. This is why responsibility lies with the communicator. This does not mean oversimplifying to the point of losing meaning. It means simplifying enough to make meaning accessible. It means being intentional about how something is structured, how it is explained, and how it is delivered. It means asking, is this clear? Can this be understood? What might be misunderstood here? These questions are part of stewardship. There is also a personal dimension to this responsibility. Clarity in communication is often a reflection of clarity in thinking. If your thoughts are disordered, your communication will reflect that. If your understanding is incomplete, your expression will reveal it. This means that clarity must first be developed internally. Before you can communicate clearly, you must think clearly. Before you can explain something, you must understand it deeply. This internal clarity becomes the foundation of external clarity. As within, so without. The Mojig's doctrine has consistently emphasized this idea. In Statute 2, the rejection of tactical specialization, we made it clear that our value does not come from isolated skills, but from process mastery. We are not defined by a tool, but by how we think. This is important, because clarity is not just about what you say, it is about how you think before you say it. If your thinking is structured, your communication will be structured. If your thinking is precise, your communication will be precise. Clarity flows from within. So, if you have been given something to communicate, whether it is truth, knowledge, or vision, then clarity is part of your assignment. It is not something to be ignored. It is not something to be assumed. It is something to be practiced, because what you carry is not only for you. It is meant to reach others. And if it is to reach others, it must be clear. Take a moment to consider this. What have you been entrusted with? And how clearly are you communicating it? Are you assuming understanding or ensuring it? Are you expressing or translating? These questions matter because clarity is not a talent reserved for a few. It is a responsibility for anyone who carries something that matters. And when that responsibility is taken seriously, what you carry is no longer hidden. It becomes visible. It becomes accessible. It becomes effective because it is understood.